Boi. Come. Bashalan. In the peace. Atele. Putting crown on. Byler. Her husband. Boi Kailar. Come bride. This is a beautiful Hebrew wedding song, as if the angels in heaven are calling for the bride who has been waiting for 6,000 years to stand up bravely and put on the crown of glory for the coming King of Heaven.
大家好，欢迎来到以诺谈天节目。今天我们讲亚伯拉罕的故事第8部分。旷野立约住四方，天雨因此的满福。撒来心极力下甲，听妻闯祸的教训。前面我们说了，上帝在创造天地之先就呼唤亚伯兰2次，伯兰，伯兰。伯兰出生见天象，宁录王要杀他，结果仆人的儿子代替了亚伯兰，神救了他。亚伯兰苦寻上帝，宁录建塔办天庭。亚伯兰披神像，宁录把亚伯兰与哥哥哈兰投入火炉，最终亚伯兰3日3夜毫发未损，哈兰死在火炉中。宁录再次要杀亚伯兰，最终他们全家逃离。神第一次呼召亚伯兰进迦南地，神第二次呼召亚伯兰进迦南地，遇见荒年，撒来险遭不测。罗德与亚伯兰分开，差点被掳去，亚伯兰带318家丁救罗德。
Hello everyone, welcome to EnochTH Show. Today we begin the story of Abraham, Part 8. The covenant made in wilderness will bless the four corners, and the universe is full of blessings. Sarai was anxious to get a son through Hagar, and Abram listened to his wife, entered troubles, and learned his lesson. In the previous sections we talked before the creation of the heaven and the earth. God called Abram twice, Burim and Burim. Abram was born, and King Nimrod wanted to kill him, but his servant's son took Abram's place. God saved him. Abram searched so hard for the way of back to heaven. Nimrod built a tower to rebel against heaven. In anger, Abram burned idols of false gods and smashed the idols of Nimrod. Abram was thrown in the furnace for 3 days and 3 nights. But he walked out without damage even a single hair. Nimrod had a nightmare and wanted to kill Abram. And Abram entered the land of Canaan in his early 50s. God called Abram for the second time into the land of Canaan. In the famine years, beauty of Sarai almost landed her a disaster. Lot and Abram separated and were almost captured. Abram brought 318 servants to rescue Lot.
下面我们来看这部分内容，先看经文描述。这是以后，耶和华在异象中有话对亚伯兰说：“亚伯兰，你不要惧怕，我是你的盾牌，必大大的赏赐你。”亚伯兰说：“主耶和华啊，我既无子，你还赐我什么呢？并且要承受我家业的是大马士革人以利以谢。”亚伯兰又说：“你没有给我儿子，那生在我家中的人就是我的后嗣。”耶和华又有话对他说：“这人必不成为你的后嗣，你本身所生的才成为你的后嗣。”于是领他走到外边，说：“你向天观看，数算众星，能数得过来吗？”又对他说：“你的后裔将要如此。”亚伯兰信耶和华，耶和华就以此为他的义。耶和华又对他说：“我是耶和华，曾领你出了迦勒底的乌尔，我要将这的赐你为业。”亚伯兰说：“主耶和华啊，我怎能知道必得这地为业呢？”他说：“你为我取1只3年的母牛，1只3年的母山羊， 一只3年的公绵羊，一只斑鸠，一只雏鸽。亚伯兰就取了这些来，每样劈开，分成2半，一半对着一半的摆列，只有鸟没有劈开。有只鸟下来，落在那死处的肉上，亚伯兰就把它吓飞了。日头正落的时候，亚伯兰沉沉地睡了。忽然有惊人的大黑暗落在他身上。耶和华对亚伯兰说：“你要的确知道，你的后裔必寄居别人的地，又服侍那地的人，那地的人要苦待他们400年，并且他们所要服侍的那国，我要惩罚。后来他们必带着许多财物从那里出来。但你要想大寿数，平平安安地归到你列祖那里，被人埋葬。到了第4代，他们必回到此地，因为亚摩利人的罪孽还没有满盈。日落天黑，不料有冒烟的炉并烧着的火把从那些肉块中经过。当那日，耶和华与亚伯兰立约，说：我已赐给你的后裔，从埃及河直到幼发拉底大河之地，就是基尼人、基尼喜人、甲摩尼人、赫人、比利洗人、利伐因人、亚摩利人、迦南人、革迦撒人、耶布斯人之地。创世纪15章1至21节和合本。全是。亚伯兰3次与神争辩，结果每次都出幺蛾子。第一次是亚伯兰又说：你没有给我儿子，那生在我家中的人就是我的后嗣。结果就跑出以实玛利来，我们下面要看的经文。第二次亚伯兰与神争辩，创17章18节，愿以实玛利活在你面前，结果儿子的名字成了笑。你既然不信，按笑，我就让你们全家在明处笑一辈子。第三次亚伯兰与神争辩，创18章从50到10人，最终撒来在怀孕期差点遭难。当我们不明白时，就喜欢与神争辩，可一争就给撒旦留下把柄，最终上帝就从祝福的第一方案移到后面的教育方案。当然，有问题不问也是错的，就算在心里的问题，上帝也知道。撒来在心里笑了，上帝就摆在明处。撒来再次显遭祸，就是上帝要告诉亚伯兰，就算一个义人，我必救他全家。其他的嘛啊，上帝明明白白地告诉亚伯兰，他的后代要受苦400年，从以撒出生到摩西80岁带领以色列人，刚好400年。可摩西出埃及记却说整430年，是笔误，还是另有原因？我们以后会细细解析。4代人之后就再回来，以撒是第1代，雅各是第2代，约瑟是第3代，马拿西是第4代，摩西是第5代。大家细读上帝的应许，上次是多如海沙，这次是多如星辰，哪个更多？亚伯拉罕站在何处？看见啥？我们今天的世界为以色列人是不是该有那巴掌大的地争论不休？实际上，上帝把整个天宇都赐给了他，所以才有保罗看见被提的那幕异象。实际上，被提与得救毫无关联。被提的亚伯拉罕的子孙去外星球居住的过程，要到耶稣1000年后近100年才开始的。人看不清耶稣2次再来要间隔2000年，怎么能分清楚遥远的未来间隔100年的世界？我们继续读下甲的经文。亚伯兰的妻子撒来不给他生儿女。撒来有一个使女，名叫夏甲，是埃及人。撒来对亚伯兰说：耶和华使我不能生育，求你和我的使女同房，或者我可以因他的孩子得孩子。原文是被建立。亚伯兰听从了撒来的话，于是亚伯兰的妻子撒来将使女埃及人夏甲给了丈夫为妾。那时亚伯兰在迦南， 已经住了10年。亚伯兰与夏甲同房，夏甲就怀了孕。他见自己有孕，就小看他的主母。撒来对亚伯兰说：“我因你受屈，我将我的使女放在你怀中。他见自己有了孕，就小看我。愿耶和华在你我中间判断。”亚伯兰对撒来说：“使女在你手下，你可以随意待她。”撒来苦待她，她就从撒来面前逃走了。耶和华的使者在旷野舒尔路上的水泉旁遇见他，对他说：“撒来的使女夏甲，你从哪里来？要往哪里去？”夏甲说：“我从我的主母撒来面前逃出来。”耶和华的使者对他说：“你回到你主母那里，伏在他手下。”又说：“我必使你的后裔极其繁多，甚至不可胜数。”并说：“你如今怀孕要生一个儿子，可以给他起名叫以实玛利，就是神听见的意思，因为耶和华听见了你的苦情。他为人必像野驴，他的手要攻打人，人的手也要攻打他。他必住在众弟兄的东边。”夏甲就称那对他说话的耶和华为看顾人的神。耶而说：“在这里我也看见那看顾我的吗？”所以这井名叫毕尔拉海来。这井正在加低斯和巴列中间。后来夏甲给亚伯兰生了一个儿子，亚伯兰给他起名叫以实玛利。夏甲给亚伯兰生以实玛利的时候，亚伯兰年86岁。创世纪16章1至16节和合本。
Now, let's look at this part. First look at the description of the scriptures. After these things the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." But Abram said, "Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?" Then Abram said, "Look, you have given me no offspring, indeed one born in my house is my heir." And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now toward heaven, and count the stars if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Then he said to him, "I am the Lord, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land to inherit it." And he said, "Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it?" So he said to him, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." Then he brought all these to him and cut them in two, down the middle, and placed each piece opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds in two. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, "Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge, afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace, you shall be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." And it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. On the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the Canaanites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. Genesis 15 verses 1 to 21 NKJV. Interpretation. Abram argued with God 3 times, but each time he made a fool of himself. The first time, Abram said again, "You have not given me a son, those who are born in my house are my heirs." And it ended up jumping out of Ishmael, the scriptures we'll see next. The second time Abram argued with God, Genesis 17 verse 18, "May Ishmael live before you," and as a result his son's name became Laughter. Since you don't believe it, laugh secretly, I will let your whole family laugh in the open place for a lifetime. The third time Abram argued with God, Genesis 18, from 50 to 10 people, and finally Sarai was nearly humiliated during her pregnancy. When we don't understand, we like to argue with God, but once we argue, we will give Satan an excuse. In the end, God would move from the first plan, often the best, of blessing to the latter plan, often to educate you and train you. Of course, it is wrong not to ask questions. Even if there is a problem in his heart, God knows it. When Sarai laughed in her heart, God knew it clearly. Sarai was in the same kind of danger again that happened since God was going to tell Abram that even if he was the only one righteous man, God would save his whole family. For the other manna, God clearly told Abram that his descendants would suffer for 400 years. It was exactly 400 years from the time Isaac was born to when Moses was 80 years old to lead the Israelites. However, Moses' Exodus said that it was 430 years, which was a typo error. Or is there another reason? We will analyze it in detail later. It comes back after 4 generations, Isaac the first, Jacob the second, Joseph the third, Manasseh the fourth, and Moses the fifth. Everyone read God's promises carefully. Last time it was as numerous as sea sand, this time it was as numerous as stars. Which one is more? Where does Abraham stand? See what? In our world today, there is an endless debate over whether the Israelites should have a palm-sized land. In fact, God gave him the whole universe. That's why Paul saw the vision of being raptured. In fact, being raptured has nothing to do with salvation. The process of the raptured Abraham's descendants to live in alien planets will not begin until nearly 100 years after Jesus' second coming. Prophets could not see that there are 2,000 years between the two comings of Jesus, so how could they distinguish the events that are separated by 100 years in the distant future? We continue to read Hagar's scriptures. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. And she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please, go in to my maid, perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. Then Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went in to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Then Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my maid into your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, I became despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between you and me." So Abram said to Sarai, "Indeed your maid is in your hand, do to her as you please." And when Sarai dealt harshly with her, she fled from her presence. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, where have you come from, and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, Return to your mistress, and submit yourself under her hand. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, you are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, You are the God who sees, for she said, Have I also here seen him who sees me? Therefore the well was called Bir Lahai Roi. Observe, it is between Kadesh and Beerd. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Genesis 16 verses 1 to 15 NKJV。
我们来读亚萨尔书。23哈兰的女儿撒来，就是亚伯兰的妻子，那些日子仍不生育，不给亚伯兰生儿女。24她见自己不生育，就将法老赐给她的使女夏甲给了她丈夫亚伯兰为妾。25夏甲学习撒来所教导她的一切，在她所遵行的事上毫无缺欠。26撒来对亚伯兰说：“这是我的使女夏甲，你与她同房，使她在我膝上生育，我也可以因她给孩子。”27亚伯兰住在迦南地的第10年，亚伯兰85岁，撒来将夏甲给了他。28亚伯兰听了他妻子撒来的话，娶了夏甲，并与他同房，夏甲就怀了孕。29夏甲见自己有孕，极其欢喜，就小看他的主母，心里说：这只能证明我在神面前比我的主母撒来强，因我主母与我主人一起的日子，她没有怀孕，但耶和华使我霎时就从她怀了孕。30撒来见夏甲从亚伯兰怀了孕，就嫉妒他的使女，心里说：这必定是因他比我强。31撒来对亚伯兰说：我向你行了错事了，那时你向神祈求孩子，为何没为我祈求，使耶和华叫我从你得儿子呢？32我在你面前对夏甲说话，他轻看我的言语，因他怀了孕，你也不向他说什么。愿耶和华因你向我所行的，在你我中间判断。33亚伯兰对撒来说：使女在你手中，你可以随意待她。撒来苦待她，夏甲就从撒来面前逃到旷野去了。34耶和华的使者在他逃走的路上的水泉旁遇见他，对他说：不要害怕，我必使你的后裔极其繁多，你如今怀孕要生一个儿子，可以给他起名叫以实玛利。你回到你主母那里，伏在他手下。35夏甲称那井为毕尔拉海莱，这井正在加迪斯和巴列旷野中间。36夏甲回到他主人家中，日子满足，给亚伯兰生了一个儿子，亚伯兰给他起名叫以实玛利。夏甲给亚伯兰生以实玛利的时候，亚伯兰年86岁。全是上帝完全在按照对以扫，也就是对亚当家的祝福，在祝福以实玛利。亚当家夏甲代表的一得到祝福，就立刻轻看以色列家撒来代表的，最终就被赶出来，差点干渴死在旷野。好在神怜悯亚当家，给了我们生存必须的生命活水，我们才得以有今天。实际上，亚伯兰娶夏甲， 为亚当留后必须先发生，才会有撒来生子，这是上帝的诫命。可在这过程中，亚伯兰听了妻子撒来的话，没有去求告上帝的意见，这就是与亚当一样犯了极大的错误。接下来，上帝没出现一次，直到亚伯兰99岁。也许我们会觉得，亚当只犯了一次错误，就闯下那么大的祸，上帝是不是不近人情？亚伯兰这里也犯了一样的错，为什么上帝就饶恕了呢？等我们听完亚当的故事，就会明白上帝的努力。上帝对亚当家只提最重要的那次，而对亚伯拉罕家半个错误都不放过。亚伯拉罕冷藏13年，就明白了，后面再也没犯错，所以才成功的献以撒，成就了上帝的使命。上帝在安排时，对我们的错都会有安排。摩西是那次中出错，最终大灾难时就不再犯错。约瑟错误的求纠正帮助，最终上帝又加他2年，结果还是刚刚好。30岁出山当埃及王80年。亚伯兰被冷藏13年后，还是刚刚好，99岁割礼，100岁生以撒。所以一切都在上帝的掌控之中。再者，用夏甲为亚当留后，这是诫命的必须。只是上帝在这过程中也教育了亚伯兰，不能光听妻子的，不祷告神就决定。所以是在一个可以改正的，又合乎上帝诫命的事上教育亚伯兰。实际上，等我们谈亚当的故事时，我们就会看见上帝做来很多类似的教育，最终亚当一意孤行才有的那结局。不仅如此，最终亚当几次来到这世界轮回，最终也都失败了。就算如此，上帝还是让他末日也来大考试。如果能成功，上帝当然高高兴兴地接他回天界。所以我们现在不论断。回到我们末日时分，我们不可能知晓一切，我们只能在我们知晓的范围内，尽心、尽力、尽意去跟从神，做他喜悦的事。
Let's read. Book of Jasher, Chapter 16. 23 And Sarai, the daughter of Haran, Abram's wife, was still barren in those days. She did not bear to Abram either son or daughter. 24 And when she saw that she bare no children, she took her handmaid Hagar, whom Pharaoh had given her, and she gave her to Abram her husband for a wife. 25 For Hagar learned all the ways of Sarai, as Sarai taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. 26 And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, here is my handmaid Hagar, go to her, that she may bring forth upon my knees, that I may also obtain children through her. 27 And at the end of 10 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 85th year of Abram's life, Sarai gave Hagar unto him. 28 And Abram hearkened to the voice of his wife Sarai, and he took his handmaid Hagar, and Abram came to her, and she conceived. 29 And when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she rejoiced greatly, and her mistress was despised in her eyes, and she said within herself, This can only be that I am better before God than Sarai my mistress, for all the days that my mistress has been with my Lord, she did not conceive, but me the Lord has caused in so short a time to conceive by him. 30 And when Sarai saw that Hagar had conceived by Abram, Sarai was jealous of her handmaid, and Sarai said within herself, This is surely nothing else, but that she must be better than I am. 31 And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee, for at the time when thou didst pray before the Lord for children, why didst thou not pray on my account, that the Lord should give me seed from thee? 32 And when I speak to Hagar in thy presence, she despiseth my words, because she is conceived, and thou wilt say nothing to her. May the Lord judge between me and thee for what thou hast done to me. 33 And Abram said to Sarai, Behold, thy handmaid is in thy hand, do unto her as it may seem good in thy eyes. And Sarai afflicted her, and Hagar fled from her to the wilderness. 34 And an angel of the Lord found her in the place where she had fled, by a well, and he said to her, Do not fear, for I will multiply thy seed, for thou shalt bear a son, and thou shalt call his name Ishmael. Now then return to Sarai thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. 35 And Hagar called the place of that well Bir Lahairoi, it is between Kadesh and the wilderness of Bared. 36 And Hagar at that time returned to her master's house, and at the end of days Hagar bare a son to Abram, and Abram called his name Ishmael, and Abram was 86 years old when he begot him. Interpretation. God was blessing Ishmael exactly as he blessed Esau, the house of Adam. As soon as the family of Adam, represented by Hagar, received the blessing, they immediately despised the family of Israel, represented by Sarai, and eventually they were cast out and almost died of thirst in the wilderness. Fortunately, God had mercy on the family of Adam and gave us the necessities to survive. The living water of life has made us live up to today. In fact, Abram's marriage to Hagar, which must have happened first to leave sons for Adam, then Sarai could have a son, is a commandment from God. But in the process, Abram listened to the words of his wife Sarai and did not seek God's advice. This was the same mistake and huge mistake as Adam did. Next, God did not appear once until Abram was 99 years old. Maybe we will think that Adam made such a big disaster after only making one mistake. Is God unkind? Abram also made the same mistake here. Why did God forgive him? When we hear Adam's story, we will understand God's efforts. God only mentioned the most important event to Adam's family, but God did not let go of half of the mistakes of Abraham's family. After putting into cold feet for 13 years, Abraham understood that he never made any mistakes, so he successfully offered Isaac and fulfilled God's mission. When God arranges our actions, there will be arrangements for our mistakes as well. Moses made a mistake in that time, and in the end, he will no longer make the same mistake in the Great Tribulation. Joseph mistakenly asked the cupbearer for help. In the end, God added him for 2 more years. The result was just right. He came out of the jail at the age of 30 and became the second king of Egypt for 80 years. After 13 years of cold feet, Abram was still just at the right time, circumcised at 99, and gave birth to Isaac at 100. So everything is under God's control. Furthermore, sleeping with Hagar to leave sons for Adam was a must for the commandment, but God also taught Abram during this process that he could not just listen to his wife and make decisions without praying to God, so it was in a situation where he could make corrections. Educating Abram in these events was in accord with the commandments of God. In fact, when we talk about Adam's story, we will see that God did a lot of similar education, and in the end, Adam went his own way and ignored these training. Not only that first life appearance, but later, Adam came to this world several times, reincarnations, and all failed. Even so, God still let Adam come to the big test at the doomsday. If he succeeds, of course, God will happily take him back to the heavenly home, so we don't judge his fate now. Back in doomsday, we can't know everything, we can only follow God with all our heart, strength, and mind within the scope of our knowledge, and do what will please God.
下回书第9部分，我们谈神与亚伯兰立割礼的约，给撒来改名准备生以撒。老亚伯兰忍着割礼的痛，继续在橡树下迎接客旅，不想遇见神与天使，在为准备牛犊时， 牛犊跑了，亚伯兰忍着痛去追，结果遇见大神迹。原来这通折腾背后，上帝赐了大祝福。要知道是啥祝福，我们下回书回答。99歌里再立约，撒来更名要得子。忍痛橡树迎客旅，天使造访牛犊奔。谢谢大家收听以诺谈天节目，希望大家顺着次序听，我们下回见。
In the 9th part of the story, we will talk about God's covenant of circumcision with Abram, changing Sarai's name and preparing them to give birth to Isaac. Old Abram endured the pain of circumcision and continued to welcome travelers under the oak tree, unexpected to meet God and angels. While preparing for the calf ran away, and Abram endured the pain to chase, but he met a great miracle. It turned out that behind this toss, God gave a great blessing. We will show in the next part what kind of blessing it was. Abram circumcised at 99 years old. God made covenant with Abram and changed Sarai's name to prepare to give birth of a son. Painful Abram sat under oak trees welcome visitors, angels visited, and a calf run away to bring great blessing. Thank you for listening to the Enoch Talk Show. I hope you will listen to it in order, and see you next time.